What's going on, everybody? This is the host of Recover Out Loud podcast, Sean Young. Before we dive in, I want to be clear. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not here to diagnose or treat. I'm simply a catalyst, someone who's walked through the fire and now speaks from experience, reflection, and a deep desire to help others find their way forward. This podcast may include honest conversations about addiction, mental health challenges, and suicidal thoughts or ideations. These are real parts of the human experience, and we won't shy away from them. If you're listening, please do so with self-care and self-awareness. And if you're struggling, please reach out. There's help out there. And most importantly, there's hope. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let's get it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Recover Out Loud, episode number 96. Today's episode, we have a very special guest. She is a writer, she's a speaker, she's a photographer, she is Wonder Woman herself. Michelle Steiner, how are you doing, Michelle?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. Today I'm really good. Yesterday I'm better than I was yesterday. So that's all that matters.
That's right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Michelle, would you like to give a formal introduction of yourself?
Sure. Well, my name is Michelle Steiner. I live in Pennsylvania with my husband, Ron, our two cats, Jack and Sparrow. I am a writer, a speaker, a photographer, and a paraeducator. I work in a school with students who have disabilities and some who don't. And I also have a learning disability myself, and I write about it on my blog, Michelle's Mission. And I use a lot of nature analogies to just describe my life with a learning disability and my journey and when I'm learning in my life so far with having one. And I also feature my photography as well. I'm not able to drive, so I take a lot of walks, and I get that opportunity to post a lot of pictures of my flowers and other really interesting things that I see.
That is awesome. I chuckled a little bit because you said your cats' names are Jack and Sparrow, and that is a
Yeah.
nod to Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. Well, when we adopted them, their previous owners were huge Disney fans. And we thought, oh, that name sounds so cute. And we just couldn't, yeah, we just kept that. And yeah, we love it.
Now, every Halloween, do they dress up like Jack Sparrow, like Cat Sparrow?
You know what? We cannot get them to put costumes on. They hate doing anything like that. We had a cat before. He loved it. We dressed him up as a vampire and all kinds of stuff. And these two, I mean, it's just it's really difficult.
Re- Very reminiscent of Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, uh-huh. True.
Oh, goodness, yeah, I love those movies. They're great movies. But yeah, one of the things that really stuck out to me was you said that you're an educator, but also you have disabilities as well. And I find that important to share your experience and be in a space where you can relate to some of the children, or the children can relate to you. It makes it a lot easier to understand, and learn.
Exactly. I have that opportunity to really go in and to be able to help a lot of students. I work with seventh graders last year, and sometimes it is like hearing a recording of myself at that age. I hear a lot of kids saying, "I hate my disability. I feel like I'm stupid. I wish I didn't have an individualized education plan." And I get that chance to go and tell them that they're not stupid, their brain just works differently, and having an IEP isn't something that makes them less than. It's just something it's guaranteeing them a plan so they can be successful in their lives, and I get to show them how to advocate. And I think that's just such a key thing, because for so many of my students, they're going to leave me and graduate, and I hope that they're able to achieve every single one of their dreams, but their disability is going to remain. And I think it's really key that we show them as as when they're young, how to handle that. I also think it gives me a unique opportunity as well, not only to show them how to advocate, but to be there in the classroom. All the kids know, do not ask me for help with math, but sometimes I really see a kid that's struggling. And I get that chance to tell them, all right, if you don't understand it, and as long as it's not math, we can come after class. We're going to go and try to be able to know how to be able to understand this. And if I can't help them, I will definitely point them in the resources of who can.
Absolutely. And I find that having an IEP is very important,
Mhm.
because children with learning disabilities, um, they, I mean, obviously, they learn a lot different than people without them, and so having that individualized education plan is paramount, because it puts the power back into the hands of the educator, where they can
Yeah.
personalize, a plan for that child to be so successful in their education, and like hopefully later on in life be successful in life.
Exactly, because once we have the plan, we can figure out what is going to work. A lot of the things that whenever I was in school that I used were things that I still use today. And some of it was stuff that I used when I went to college. I had extended test time, and just having classes that I knew if I was my disability said, so if I'm going to go to school, I'm not going to want to take a lot of classes in math, and I'm going to need, and I even added additional accommodations such as a note taker. And with, I found in my life, a lot of times it's not about, okay, I'm going to just solve the issue and I'm going to get cured of having a disability. It's just finding different ways to be able to cope, whatever might come along in my day.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I have noticed, I've heard children too say, I hate my disability, it makes me feel
Mhm.
X, Y, and Z, and really that
Mhm.
negative self-talk. And the reality is that they may not be a strong test taker, or a
Mhm.
strong learner. They are extremely smart in other areas of their life, and they don't give themselves credit for it.
Exactly. If you're going to test me and my ability with math or science, it's not going to be that wonderful. And you're testing me on stuff that you know, but that's not stuff that I may know. But if you give me things that I am good at, such as reading or other things, I can do very well in those areas. And I tend to go for the things that I'm good at and I enjoy doing, because that makes me feel more empowered. And the things that maybe I'm not so great at, I don't want to do those any more than I absolutely have to. But that's also key with a lot of people that don't have disabilities. If someone's not good at something, or somebody doesn't, you're most likely not going to enjoy it, and you're going to tend to gravitate towards the things that you like doing and the things that you enjoy.
Absolutely. And somebody who's considered normal.
Mhm.
There's things that I enjoy. Like, I love sitting and talking to people. I find so much joy in this. And I
Mhm.
don't like some other things, right? So I'm going to gravitate toward this, and I'm going to be like, this fills my cup up, versus
Mhm.
that other stuff that I have to do that's so mundane. Um,
Right.
so we're going to dive into your story. Michelle, what is your learning disability, and when did you start to realize that it was a prominent factor in your life?
Sure. I have dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability. I have visual perception issues, but that's in my brain, not in my eyes. And I also have limited hand dexterity, and that wasn't diagnosed until I was an adult. And they first found out I had a learning disability whenever I was in kindergarten. I went to school and I was really struggling in the classroom. I can remember things such as trying to tie my shoes and write my name, and visual perception on pages. Those were the real, the real kicker. I would think I was doing them perfect, and I got them back and they weren't done right. I also anything math related I really struggled with, and my teacher recommended that I get tested for having a learning disability, and sure enough, I do indeed have one. And they didn't give it the name dyscalculia at that point. They knew I was not going to be a mathematician by the time I was 5 or 6, though. And I had to repeat kindergarten the following year in a different school. And I began to receive specialty instruction in all areas. And my beginning years were really difficult. I can just remember being really frustrated. I just wanted to learn like my peers. I wanted to be able to just not have a disability. It was really a struggle. And I thought, well, my life's always going to be this struggle. And the only way I'm going to be able to get rid of it is if I just get rid of the disability. And that didn't happen. And I also really struggled socially too. I went to a very small conservative school district where if you were one of them, you were accepted. And I certainly wasn't. It was made really clear to me I wasn't from a young age. Everybody knew that I went to learning support for classes or even to have a test read aloud to me when I was in more regular ed classes. And I couldn't hide that. It wasn't like I could just blend in. And even when in learning support, I really struggled. I can remember a lot of my peers, they had more difficulties with reading, some behavior issues, and they didn't think I was very smart. And some of them had a trauma background as well, with a lot of really sad situations that were going on at home, and it just wasn't addressing their needs. And I can even look back and think there were kids in there that didn't even have learning disabilities. Some of them had autism, or they had other a lot of other difficulties with that. So it was really hard for me, both socially and academically. And I really struggled with that, thinking I'm not good at anything. And then my dad found a story that I wrote about a dinosaur in 2nd or 3rd grade and said, wow, this is really good. And that started to really change a lot of my life, because I thought, oh, this is something I'm good at. This is something I enjoy doing. And reading and writing really became my world, especially when I was being bullied. I go throughout school, and academically, school got a lot easier for me. And the more I went into school, I mean, it wasn't a lot of repetition. It wasn't that rote memory that really carried through all those years once I got to the further along I went. And I was in all regular ed classes by the time I was in high school, except for a math class and a resource room. And socially, things got a lot harder for me. All the peer groups were really defined, and I just didn't feel like I fit in with anybody. And the bullying really intensified. And I came to that point where I realized the people I was going to school with were not my tribe. They weren't the people that I was going to be hanging out with, or we're going to have a lot in common. So I started to look outside of my school district for things to do. And I ended up finding a arts group that was just right outside of our school district with kids that were my age, and they were interested in the same things that I was. None of them went to my school. So I could start to slowly shed that reputation that followed me since I was in kindergarten to being the outcast. Once I stopped hanging out with them, I found an adult writing group, and they got to see me grow as a writer and a person. And 20 some years later, we still meet once a month to talk about our writing or in each other's lives. And they really encouraged me to write about having a disability. But I put that on the shelf for quite a number of years. And I think I wrote some really bad poetry and some other things I wouldn't want to read today. And the next hurdle when I was a teenager was, well, what am I going to do once I'm done with school? I knew that I wanted to go to college, but I understood it was going to be difficult. I was doing well, but I knew that math was especially going to be the challenge. And I wasn't alone in those concerns. I had a learning support teacher who said, well, I don't think you can handle college. Why don't you just go and do a trade school? And nothing interested me. If they would have had an early childhood program, or a writing program, I would have been definitely involved with that, but they didn't have any of that. And I decided I was going to go to college, and I had to get evaluated for having a learning disability all over again. And I had a psychiatrist who told me that I was most likely not going to go beyond community college. I get to community college, and I still faced even more stigma. I had professors who were telling me that I would have limited job choices once I graduated. I had, and even disability accommodations by staff and students was generally stigmatized. People would say, "Oh, you're cheating if you get extra time on tests." Or I asked for a calculator in a math class, and a professor said, "Oh, we use our brains in this class, not calculators." So there was a huge stigma surrounding that. And I didn't end up using disability accommodations. And that was a big mistake. My grades dropped even lower, but I was in a class and I was really struggling. And I had a professor who said, "Why don't we at least get you extended test time?" And once I did that, I was able to get extra time. I mean, I got extra time on my test. I passed her class. I did not do well in it. And I was able to pass my other classes. And I have my associate's degree in early childhood education. I moved out on my own. I was enjoying my life. I also was determined that I couldn't drive before I started community college. And it was really nice being on my own because I could walk to places, but I still struggle with my purpose. I was working temp jobs and I always wanted more for myself. And be careful what you wish for because it just might happen. And I had to move back in with my parents for financial reasons. And during that time, my job was downsizing, and I thought I was going to give university a try again. I found a program that had the least amount of math and science possible. It had disability accommodations and a program I was really passionate about. And this time it was such a better experience. I got better grades. I used all the accommodations and I advocated for myself. And I was able to graduate with a bachelor's degree despite being told I couldn't do that. And I also met my husband during that time. And I took a while for me to find a job that was disability friendly. Some places claimed that they were, and they weren't. And I've been working as a paraeducator for about 15 years now, and I do enjoy working with students with disabilities. But I was also able to accomplish another dream of mine. I always wanted to be a published writer, and I finally got that courage to write about my struggle with limited hand dexterity whenever my husband and I moved into our home, and I could not unlock the front door. And I thought, I'm going to write about this. The Mighty had a call for what's a seemingly easy task that's really hard with your disability. And I wrote about it and it got published. And I had a really great response from other people. Some people would be like, well, that's my story. And I thought I was the only one that struggled with that. And that encouraged me to write other articles for them and to write for different places and to start my own blog. And then I started a passion for photography. I started taking pictures of flowers and other things that I would see in my walks. And I noticed with not driving that I was able to pick up on details that other people miss. And if I was in the car driving, that's something I would miss. So rather than being sad if I'm on a walk, I get that chance to literally stop and smell the roses and take that picture. And that's, if I didn't get that chance, that's a shot that I would miss.
It's so important to be present and in the moment. When you're talking about
Mhm.
pictures, I I try to go on walks as much as humanly possible
Mhm.
to get out in nature. Because behind these four walls is not always the best place. And so, getting out in nature has been given me the opportunity to really, like you said, stop and smell the flowers, stop and smell the roses. And so for you to say that is just very refreshing to hear, that you miss that so many people just pass by and they miss the small details of what is there.
Yes, definitely. Of what is there. Yeah. Yep.
Um, so you hit on a lot of good key points throughout, sharing your story. One of the first ones that I was going to ask was, what was the social pressure? And you nailed it right on the head. As somebody who I was a nerd growing up, so I was one of those kids that got picked on all the time for anything and everything. And I just, when you were explaining, what you were going through, I just pictured, 7, 8, 9-year-old me with these big pink framed glasses and all that stuff, just feeling exactly the same way that you felt, or similar to that. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. That's terrible.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry for what you went through too. Yeah, it's never an easy experience.
No, no, it's not. No, it's not. But with every story, there's resilience, and when
Mhm.
when you were sharing about the teachers that you encountered that said you'll never be X, you'll never be Y, you'll never be Z. You surpassed all of those things, and you heard those things from those teachers, and I don't know if it was going in your head at the time, but when I was sitting here listening, I kind of got that sense of you'll see, you'll see.
Right. During the time I was going in there and I didn't have that confidence. I really was worried and I really internalized a lot of that. But now I can look back on it and say, okay, I did it scared. I did it not knowing if I was going to be successful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know, and then when you shared about the professor saying that in math we don't use calculators, we use our brain. It takes your brain to use a calculator. Like, come on,
Yeah.
come on, let's be real here.
And even with the disability, I can put that in the calculator and it doesn't help much either. I still can get the wrong answer. I mean, you have to know what you're doing.
Yeah, and it still won't make sense to you. Even, you know, even when you're putting it in the calculator, like, how did you come up to that term? Like,
Yeah.
how did you come up to that answer? It still doesn't make sense. So for him to say a really ignorant statement like that just really threw me. I was like, "Wow, how ignorant can somebody be?"
Exactly.
Yeah, but would you enlighten us as to what a paraeducator is? I've never heard that term before.
Sure. It's a paraprofessional. It's a teacher's aide. So I go in the classroom and I help the teacher and the students in the room.
Oh, okay. Okay, now that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Yep.
Alright, alright. So you started blogging. What was what was your first blog? How do you feel like when you look back at it, if you do look back at it and you're like, "Wow, I've changed so much." How does that make you feel?
I think it's a progression of just finding what really has worked for me. I've used a number of different platforms, and I think it was just finding the one that really was something that I could support and that really worked. And that took that. I mean, that did take some time, but I can also remember. I think the first post I wrote was about the unexpected gift of having a learning disability, and that really is something that I've been able to kind of see, okay, yeah, the gift that's come along. And I've also had that chance to write different kinds of articles and to be able to post just different things that I'm doing. And things maybe even beyond my blog, maybe getting published in some place. I kind of went from that one blog article or that one place to getting published to getting it published in different places and to use photography. And it's helped me to grow with that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure you could just put a picture book together now with all the pictures that you've taken out in nature.
That's a good idea. I would like to eventually do a memoir and also combine the flowers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that really kind of stuck out to me is when you said that people are coming to you and giving you really good feedback, like saying, "Hey, this is my story." How does that make you feel?
That makes me feel less alone because sometimes, especially with having hidden disabilities or having ones that people aren't really familiar with, there's this tendency to kind of live in this world where you think you're the only person that's struggling with that. And I just know that, like, especially once COVID hit, there was a lot of groups that started meeting up, or people in the groups, and people were saying, well, I have a math learning disability too, or I struggle with not being able to drive. And that just makes me feel like, okay, I'm not the only person that has this. There's other people out there that have it as well.
Absolutely. And you hit on COVID, and I think one of the things, as terrible as it was, and what it
Hmm.
did for the world was terrible, but what it did for individuals that I realized, from a bystander looking back, that's when I entered in my recovery.
Hmm.
Looking back and seeing, some of the people that have come out of that era, it was really a an era of self-discovery and
Yeah.
growth because you had to sit with yourself and you had to sit in that uncomfortable, silence sometimes. And so I felt like a lot of people were able to start to express themselves, become more artistic, and become, blossom into who they are meant to be, or discover a passion. And so, how did COVID treat you?
Well, one of the things that it really did was it opened up a lot of different people that had the chance to meet. We couldn't go out, so virtually a lot of groups had to meet, and that really opened up a lot of things for myself. I got to meet other people that had that. We had a journal writing group that met for a few years weekly, and I'm still friends with some of the people today. We no longer meet with that. And it also opened up maybe different experiences too. Like they had a painting group, and I'm not much of a painter. My husband paints really well. I can kind of just do like flowers or abstract ones, but that opened up maybe something. Okay, I'll try doing that. Doesn't mean I may not be successful with that, but also sharing my story. I was able to be able to have that opportunity and that time to share a story, and also to be able to blog more. That gave me a lot of time that I don't have as much of, especially once the school year starts. But that was an opportunity that I had to maybe explore some of those things, and just to be able to reach out to other people as well.
Yeah. I'm not artistic one bit. I try. I'm
Mhm.
not. I drew this like happy, like Merry Christmas wreath on a thing, and I was like really proud of myself. And I was like, dude, that's like a third grader. But like now, I like kind of like, you ever seen those videos where people just take paint and throw it on the canvas? That
Yeah. Uh-huh.
that's like the extent of my artistic capability.
Some people that there's people that do that, and they are famous for it, and they have their art in a gallery, and that's just, yeah, you just never know.
Don't tempt me, because I might mess around and be a millionaire in a
Yeah,
little bit.
maybe, yeah.
But anyways, you said something that really stuck out to me, and it kind of parallels a phrase that we have in
Mhm.
recovery. It's called the gift of desperation, but you said the gift of a disability. Explain that.
I used to look at my disability as something that made me really less than, and I looked at it as what good could ever come out of having one. And now I get that chance every day, whether I'm writing an article and somebody says, okay, I hear you. That's something I struggle with. Or if I'm working with students in a school, that gives me that opportunity that I wouldn't have that empathy. I wouldn't have that understanding. Having a disability isn't something that just helped me when I was able to go to school, or I was able to write, or to get a job with that. It's helping other people as well. I can remember I was working in a classroom with a boy, and they were doing math, and I was in that room. Despite telling people I cannot help you with that, I was still put in that situation. And this I was wondering, I just look up to this guy and I said, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why? I mean, I obviously cannot help a kid with this. And I can remember there was another kid that said, Mrs. Steiner, this boy is crying. And I went over to him, and he was so frustrated because he couldn't do the math. And I had the chance to get on eye level with him, and I say, I now understand how hard this is. And I'm sorry, I'm not able to help you, but I want you to come to me when you're really struggling, and we're going to get you the resources and the help that you can, somebody that can help you with that. And before I knew it, this kid wasn't crying anymore. He was raising his hand. He was participating in class. And I've gotten the opportunity to see this kid throughout the years. And he's up there now, not frustrated. He raises his hand. He asks questions. He's doing that work independently. But if I didn't have a disability, I would just think, well, why is this kid crying? Or he's really not trying. If he really wanted to do that, he could. But I can look back on that and know what it's like to be in a situation like that. And a lot of those kids, when I tell my story, or I talk to them about having a disability, they will talk to me about theirs, and they know that I may not always have all the answers, but I'm a safe place that they can go to, and they can talk about it.
Absolutely. You're when you were explaining that, I just kept thinking empathy, right? Like the empathy that you had for that kid in that moment is not one that would be given to another child in a regular school system, right? And so you provided that safe space for him to be able to open up and be like, "Hey, I don't understand this. Can you help me out?" And so that's amazing. That's very awesome. That's
Thank
very
you.
awesome. So Michelle, moving forward in the future, what do you see in the future for yourself?
I would love to expand my blog to be able to help more people with writing. I would definitely like a book someday in the future. And just being able to help other people that have disabilities to be able to thrive.
Absolutely. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's awesome. What I ask all of my guests before we leave, well, I'm starting to now that I'm recording again. I'm very big on gratitude. So, what are three things that you are grateful for today?
I'm grateful for the house that I live in. I'm grateful for my husband, and I'm just grateful for all the people that I've met through just with having a disability.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Michelle, where can we find you at?
You can find me at my blog, www.michellesmission.com.
Sweet, sweet. I want to take a minute and say thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and thank you for being vulnerable and opening up and talking about some of the harder topics that a lot of society doesn't like to talk about and shies away from.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I am so grateful for you. And everybody, until next time, I am grateful for you. Be kind to yourself, love yourself. You are loved, you are worthy, and you are worth it. Have a nice day.